This is Great Call, or Mikey as we call him in the barn. This is a 9-year-old thoroughbred gelding. He's a jumper. We'll show you some of our techniques and tips for turning out a jumper later in the series, but today we're going to show you how to give a proper bath. This horse stains his front legs every day. He had a bath yesterday, believe it or not. So we always come through and pre-treat his white socks, brush the dust off. And then we like to use the Shoshin stain remover and whitener. It has sort of an oxy power to it. Spray it directly onto the stain. And let that set while we're getting our bath supplies set up. We like to use the 2-in-1 shampoo with conditioner from Absorbing, made again by Shoshin. We find that it gets the horses really clean to the skin. It has a high sud, but it also is really easy to rinse out. Just squeeze approximately an ounce into your bucket. We also, if any horses have any skin problems, which this horse does, and we'll talk about that, we do a little chlorhexidine rinse at the end of each bath. And again, you're going to give a little bit, about an ounce. We also use the cool down. We use this after a ride if a horse doesn't need a full bath, if they haven't sweated very much, but to wipe their girth mark, their saddle area, and anywhere they've sweat around their head. This is just a nice kind of liniment. It's an herbal after workout rinse. Again, we just put about an ounce in the bucket. Each of these buckets has their own sponge, and they should be kept separate into the buckets with the soap, clear water, chlorhexidine, and cool down. So once I've put the product in each bucket, and each bucket has its own sponge, I make sure to get the temperature of the water where I want it, which is a medium warm. In the winter it can be warmer, in the summer it can be cooler. And then I fill these buckets up. So the first step in bathing your horse is to rinse their body really well. I actually like to use a jet setting because I feel that it gets the horse clean to their skin. If I have a horse that doesn't like that, it makes them nervous or stressed, then I just adjust it to the shower setting. This horse came to us with a very bleached coat. He spent 12 hours a day outside, and his coat really took a beating for it. We've worked really hard to get him to start to shed out, and through bathing and currying, we're starting to get his next layer of hair in. Always check your water temperature before you put it on the horse. It will warm up or cool down while you're filling your buckets. Start at the horse's legs. And then move up to their shoulder and wither, and up to their neck. I'm very careful to never ever spray my horses in the face, ever. They all know that, and so I can get right up to the back of their ears without them worrying that I'm going to spray them in the face. We'll talk about a proper way to wash a horse's face later in the series. Once your horse's body is completely wet, you're going to start with your soap. Get your sponge as soapy as possible. I kind of squeeze it in the water and really load the sponge up with soap. Starting at the top, just like washing a car. Top to bottom, front to back. Make sure you get well into the roots of the mane. When you run out of soap, you're going to load it back up. I know. Pay special attention to the top of their hindquarters where they tend to gather a lot of dust. If your horse is a little sensitive or the pressure feels too hard, back off. Don't rub so hard that they flinch or act like their back is sore. If they can take a little more pressure and you can dig in a little more, get them really clean. Some horses are more sensitive, just like people. Down the leg, you can see that the green spot remover has done a Really nice job. Normally we would clip this horse's legs, especially because they're white, but he is not a fan of being clipped. And he's new to us, so we just need to take a little more time to get him comfortable with the clippers. Always take a moment to get behind between their legs, up under their thigh. This is where the sweat and the sand from the arena will gather, and it can make them really uncomfortable and even sore. Paying special attention to the front of the cannon bone, where horses can get scurf. I've soaped his body with the sponge. I take my curry comb, scoop up some soapy water, and go through the same process with the curry. Just make sure that he gets completely clean all the way to the skin. A rubber mitt on a more sensitive horse works really well too. Again, gentle. This is a thoroughbred. He's thin-skinned, sensitive horse, so I'm very gentle on his back. Back here on his rump where they gather a lot of dust, I can put a little more pressure there and really get him clean. Important to wash the horse's face. This horse came to us with pretty severe fungus or scurf on the sides of his face here. So we've had to wash his face quite frequently. In the beginning, he was very nervous about it. He was afraid that he was going to get sprayed in the face and, have soap put in his eyes. So I'm going to show you our system for washing faces. The face is dry right now, but it'll get wet through the process of applying the soap with the sponge. So for the body, you would want to load up your sponge and leave it full. For washing a face, you want to squeeze 3/4 of the water out of that sponge so that you can control where the lather goes. I bring my hand up to him, show him what I'm going to do. Oh, oh, oh. Start in the center of his head and let him know, oh, you're okay. We've done this a million times and now you're going to be funny. Start in the middle of his head. Go up to his forelock. Come around to the side, under the eye, behind the ear. Most of the lather has shifted to the bottom of my sponge now, so I just turn it over. Above the eye, under the jaw, down the cheek, and muzzle area, focusing on these areas where he had a fungal condition. It's almost healed. Digging in there, just being really careful to guide the soap around the eye. You don't just get it up here and squeeze it down their face and let the soap run in their eyes. Their eyes will sting just like ours will when we have soap in them. Take your time. If you're at a horse show and your horse is difficult, plan to take a friend. If you don't have a groom that washes your horse, plan to take a friend to hold them. Not all horses stand tied, and not all horses like having a bath. As that sets, I'm going to wash his tail. When I wash a horse's tail, I always, just like when I'm brushing the tail, bring the tail to the side, dunk it in the bucket, lather it well, take the bottom of the tail, loop it to the top, and work the lather through, making sure they're clean all the way to the bone and all the way down to the bottom of the tail. The last thing I do before I rinse the horse is take a stiff brush and wash their feet. I'm going to give a little extra attention to those stains and then come around and wash the manure and shavings off his feet. Always off to the side and always in a squatting position so that if he went to move over, went to kick, I could just stand up and move out of the way. This next bucket is full of just plain fresh water. This sponge hasn't had any soap on it. I'll give it a little squeeze just to make sure. This is how we're going to rinse his face. Again, take and squeeze the majority of that water out so that we can direct it as we wash his face. Just wait. If it's worried, just wait. Just wait on him. As you squeeze the water out, you can direct the water with the sponge. So this horse never gets water or soap accidentally in his eyes. So as I squeeze, I direct. I direct it around the eye, down the cheek, down the muzzle, around the mouth, down the face, but never in just squeezing and letting it go in the horse's eye. So the next step is to rinse his body, and I use the hose for rinsing their body because I feel like you can get them really clean and make sure all the soap leaves the skin. Always check the water temperature when you go to start again. Same procedure, start at the leg, work your way up, mane, oh, I know. Never being close to the ear or the head, so they start to trust that. You can use your hand to rub the skin and make sure that it's soap-free. Making sure to really rinse any soap out of their hair and skin. Hi. The last step is to use your sweat scraper to remove the excess water. This also will tell you if you've left any soap in their skin. When you run the sweat scraper down their body, that should be clean, clear water, no suds, no dirt. Removing the water actually cools the horse down faster in the summertime and helps them to dry faster in the wintertime. So if we have a horse with any kind of skin condition, such as scratches or scurf or fungus on their legs or anywhere on their body, the last thing we would do is give a little rinse with a chlorhexidine and water solution. The front of the legs where the horses can get scurf, and then down the pastern area where the horses are prone to scratches. Chlorhexidine is an antiseptic, and it helps to kill any little germs that they might have picked up in the sand or dirt during exercise or turnout. You want to at least towel dry your horse's legs. We like to wait until the legs are completely dry before we put them away, but depending on your bedding and your environment, a towel dry might be sufficient. I also like to towel dry the horse's face because we don't use the hose to rinse it, just in case there's any soapy residue. This is just one more step in making sure that face gets completely clean, and they actually really like it, that soft towel on their face. Hi. And finish by combing the mane, the forelock, and the mane to help train them to lay flat. I don't like manes that go on both sides. The horse's mane should be flat to the right side of their neck. We like to use this detangler gel at the end of a bath. This just helps that when the horse is completely dry, the tail is easy to brush, it's conditioned, and much more tangle-free than if you just let it dry on its own. Put a little squeeze in your hand. And just come back, bringing the tail to the side and just rubbing it through. So you can see that this horse is already starting to dry. It's quite a warm day here in Oregon, so we don't need to put a cooler on him. But if it was at all chilly, we would want to put an Irish knit cooler or a wool cooler on him to help him dry and not get cold. It's also important to know that you don't want to bathe your horse every day. Currying and grooming the horse will bring out the natural oils in the coat, and that's ultimately what gets your horse shiny. Once a week is status quo for us here at Cascadia Sporthorses, unless we have a trial or a horse show. We do wash their tails more frequently than that. I find that if I bathe them more than once a week, their coat can get dry, and you're just playing catch up with more currying and more bathing and more grooming products. A good curry, brushing the coat well, rubbing with a towel, that's ultimately what puts the best coat on a horse. Good alternative to bathing your horse every day is to use a body brace after a workout. A lot of times the horse just sweats where the saddle and the girth go. You can help cut through that sweat and dirt with a body brace, such as the cool down from absorbing. Get the sponge wet. Again, squeeze 1/2 to 3/4 of it out, and you would just wipe the area where the horse had sweat marks. You could then use your towel to help that dry, and you always finish with a good curry and a brush again.